It was supposed to be a temporary solution to a problem that not only shook Kitchener, Ontario right to its core, but all of Canada. The Great Depression of the 1930s saw almost one-third of Canadians lose their jobs. So in Kitchener, a women's prayer group stepped up to feed men struggling with hunger. In 1939, they opened up a downtown mission, and they called it House of Friendship. This is Diane Vernile. In the next hour, we're inviting you to pull up a chair to our table for First We Eat, the story of House of Friendship. 80 years later, that temporary response to a community need is still running and doing so much more than just feeding the hungry.
They come here, they eat, we give them clothing, we give them a bed to sleep in, try to build them up. We try to help them find services where they can make themselves a better person and move out of House of Friendship.
That's Sandra Wall, who serves as the food coordinator at House of Friendship, a job she's held for over 35 years. Now in her late 50s, don't be fooled by her trim stature or gentle voice. Sandra runs a tight ship, part food expert, no-nonsense boss, and at times even a surrogate mother to the men who file into the eating area every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's through Sandra that we're going to tell this story.
I was 22 when I started. So I was pretty young to become a kitchen manager for sure, and a supervisor of a kitchen. And I would say I've grown a lot over the years. I've had some amazing people who have mentored me along my way, and if it wouldn't be for those people, I probably would not be here now.
Raised on a farm near Elora, Ontario, in a family with a strong Mennonite background, Sandra had worked a few years at a local restaurant. One day, a friend convinces her to go on a job interview at House of Friendship. A week later, she's hired as the kitchen supervisor. But all these years later, she admits she didn't think she'd last.
Meal planning and prepping and dealing with volunteers and dealing with staff. And I remember that while I was still in training, I'm thinking, I think maybe this job isn't for me because it's way bigger than what I think it's going to be. And there was so much to learn. There was so many things I had to know, so many rules and regulations because it was a men's shelter and I was a woman. And so I was thinking, I don't think I'm going to be here very long because I just don't think I'm going to like it.
When her parents come to volunteer one Christmas, and this is after she'd already been working there for 15 years, Sandra says her mother expresses some strong concerns.
I just remember my mother saying, I don't think that you should be working there. And this was 15 years. I had already been here 15 years. But I think for them it was an eye-opener, and I think it was good for them to see what House of Friendship was. And I remember after that, my parents always, we lived on a farm, so I know that my parents always donated meat just so that the guys could have a good meal here.
During her years at the men's shelter, Sandra says that she's seen it all, from tragedy.
We've had a number of fatalities in here, which has been quite scary for staff. I mean, because you try to revive these persons who are on drugs. We had a few fatalities within the last year, and it just, puts everybody on their guard.
To kindness, like the homeless man who insisted on giving her a Christmas gift.
It was a snow globe, and it had an angel in it. And I said, I really think you should give this to, your family. And he said, no, I want you to have it. You're the one who has meant the most to me in the last years. And I did end up accepting it, and I still put it out at Christmas time.
And then there are the comical moments, one in particular involving an Elvis impersonator.
He wasn't a great singer, but I would say, oh, sure, if you want to sing, let's sing. But he would always sing a number of Elvis songs. It was quite entertaining, quite comical.
3.5 decades later, Sandra is still preparing food for the hungry, feeding anywhere from 40 to 50 men a day.
I got to get to know a few of the men coming through the line for meals, and got to know the staff, and I seemed to settle down, and it was a great job. It still is a great job.
In a year, House of Friendship, through all its programs, serves about 42,000 people, which is nothing short of amazing, considering the kitchen operates with just a small staff and a roster of loyal volunteers. Together they prepare thousands of meals, with an annual budget of just $15,000 and whatever donations come in the door.
So every day I go into the fridge to see if donations have come in. And if it wouldn't be for those donations, I can honestly say our guys wouldn't eat as good as they do. The community here has been amazing. We get some wonderful food from restaurants, funeral homes, everyday people who have gardens. They bring beautiful produce into us. And truly, if it wouldn't be for those people who care about the homeless and the poor, our meals would not be as substantial, and we can honestly say that we follow Canada's Food Guide because of the food that gets donated here.
But every now and then, they get some unusual items, from wild game to a whole lamb that needed butchering to emu meat, you know, those big flightless birds from Australia.
We had an emu association years ago who were trying to get people involved in eating emus, so they didn't know what to do with the necks, and we had cases and cases of necks. So we came up with emu stew, where we took all the meat off the necks and we made a stew, and the guys loved it. They thought it was beef. So
over the years, Sandra learns to improvise in the kitchen and comes to appreciate the generosity of her community.
well, you have to be creative, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you know, the guys will say, oh, we really like this, I hope you make it again. And well, I would like to say, yeah, I can make it again, but if I don't have those ingredients, I can do something similar. But we really rely heavily on donations.
What Sandra and her team are doing, feeding the hungry, hoping food and volunteers show up, and every day being creative in the kitchen, is no different from what those caring church ladies did 80 years ago when the mission first opened. That decade earned the label the Dirty 30s. An economic recession left millions of Canadians unemployed, hungry, and sometimes homeless. We sat down with John Neufeld, Executive Director at House of Friendship, to reflect back on those early days.
My favorite part of House of Friendship is that it was started by a small group of women who, during the economic depression, were looking around, started seeing, basically the first inklings of homelessness in our community, and they didn't get immobilized, and they said, surely there's something we can do. And so they started by providing a meal for what we used to call back in the 30s hobos and transients.
It's a humbling beginning. A storefront is secured in the downtown on King Street. The goal is to feed men who have lost their jobs. There's no paid staff, just volunteers, and all the food is donated. Eventually, the onset of World War II brings an end to the Great Depression as local factories begin hiring to fuel the war effort. But still, there are those who fall through the cracks. Kitchener has grown into a bustling mid-sized Ontario city, and with that comes a growing number of men looking for not only a hot meal, but a place to stay.
And that eventually led to then providing a place for people to sleep. So then we were providing food, we were providing shelter.
That shelter now stands on Charles Street, just a few blocks away from the original mission. In the decades that follow, the hungry and homeless who arrive at their door are experiencing more complex problems like alcoholism, drug use, and mental health challenges.
Then in the 70s, we started noticing that part of the reason people experience homelessness at times is because of addiction. So we started doing addiction treatment. And then in the 80s, we started working in low-income neighborhoods and started helping families and kids that are growing up in poverty, trying to address some of their issues.
Every decade seems to bring a new dimension of problems. Currently, they're coping with opioid use.
In 2018, we're talking about the opioid crisis. And, so it's a different time, but at the end of the day, it's still, we have need in our community. We need to respond so that everyone can have a place where they can belong.
From the early 20th century to the present, the men who come calling at House of Friendship tell a similar story.
People come through our doors and say, I never thought I would be here. I never thought I'd come through your doors. I never thought I'd end up at a shelter. I never thought I'd end up using your food hamper program. I never thought, I used to have a job, I was married, I had kids, everything, and I lost everything due to my addiction. I never thought I'd be coming through here.
So what starts as a soup kitchen for men down on their luck has now evolved into a large charitable enterprise, offering housing and shelter, addiction treatment, and support in low-income neighborhoods. But it always seems to come back full circle to the food.
While food plays a huge role in all of our programs, I think food is a natural connecting point. It's a way that we can start the conversation or start the ability to have people feel like they can belong. It's pretty integral to everything we do. It's how we were started, right? It was this small group of women who had, a handful of gentlemen come off the streets and they provided them a meal.
And John knows that Sandra Wall, who runs the kitchen, is the glue holding it all together.
She's committed. She's been here for a long time. She works hard. She deeply cares about the individuals that kind of come across with her. And she's got a great sense of humor. She can be tough with them at times when appropriate and, give the supportive gesture or comment at other times when needed, but she cares about them. She lives simply and she's got a real good positive spirit. I've learned a lot serving with her over these last 9 years.
Morning. Morning. Everybody's up and out? Yeah. Okay, half an hour warning.
It's early morning, and the overnight guests, about 50 of them, are getting a wake-up call.
Good morning, gentlemen. Happy Thursday. It's really cold today, guys. -14, feels like -15.
From the main office, administrative worker Sarah Gooden makes the morning announcements. She's one of the first persons the men see when they walk in the building.
This is where staff always are. This is where we're answering phones. This is where we keep our bed list. If anyone is looking to sign in for a bed or looking to try and get a bed at the shelter, if they have any questions about that, this is where they would come and find staff.
The shelter bedrooms are on the first and second floors. Sarah takes us on a tour, starting with one of the largest bedrooms that sleeps up to 7 men.
So what you'll see when you first walk into a room is that there will be a cot, a mattress on top, and then a black and yellow big Tupperware bin. That is what someone first walking into the room would see.
There's a common gathering area with a TV and some books.
It's very small. We have 2 bookshelves filled with donation books. Right now we have quite a few encyclopedias that the guys are able to look through, take, read.
As you make your way down the stairs, you pass the back door where donations are dropped off. In the basement, there's a laundry room that's always busy, and then the kitchen and eating area.
So when you first walk into the kitchen, staff would be in the main kitchen area. We have a big open window where we would serve meal to participants coming down. Staff line it up on the serving tray and guys can come up and grab meal from the window before they go and sit down and eat.
Overseeing today's breakfast is senior cook Kathy Dow.
Today we have French toast and yogurt and always fresh coffee. Good morning. Yogurt? Yes. Monday and Thursday we do boiled eggs and toast and usually yogurt and fresh fruit. Tomorrow will be cereal and toast and usually fresh fruit. And Tuesday and Friday we have French toast.
As soon as the morning breakfast dishes are cleared, Sandra gets started on lunch. There's no time to waste.
I'm just stirring the soup so that it doesn't stick on the bottom because it's a cream soup, so cream soups tend to stick a bit, so I'm just stirring up the ingredients.
Some of the men will eat their lunch in the dining area, while others, who have jobs, will take their food to go.
They get 4 sandwiches. We offer 4 sandwiches because in the summer a lot of guys are on construction. They might miss some meals, especially breakfast and lunch. They get homemade cookies made by our cookie lady, Mary Jane, fresh fruit and a drink. And if we have extra, there you go, Dom. Extra celery and carrots, we put them in. It's a very healthy lunch, and it should go a long way.
One of those men who often takes a packed lunch is Tony, who's been in and out of House of Friendship for about 6 years. At 51, he doesn't seem like a typical resident. Tony is clean-cut and neatly dressed.
Honestly, I had a house, a boat, I had a nice middle-class life, and here I am. I never dreamed I'd end up here. I used to drive by here with my nice new Ford Explorer, and I felt bad. I thought, oh, these poor people, because they're all just kind of standing outside. And
Tony says he's held a number of good jobs over the years.
I was a heavy truck parts specialist. I went to school for marketing, but I did different things. I managed a grocery store right out of college, and then I did a couple other things. I even managed a couple of taverns. I've always been in kind of a supervisory position.
Tony was married with 4 kids. One of his best paying jobs was at a Kitchener car dealership.
I started off with a bang. I sold 7 cars in my first week, which is really, really good. That usually doesn't happen. But as time went on, I realized that I was playing second fiddle, that I wasn't going to make this $100,000 a year that he told me I'd make. So I left there and I got into lawn care.
In 2002, Tony and his wife split up, and that's when things began to spiral for him.
But it cost me a lot of money. We couldn't settle. I wanted to buy the house outright, and it's too bad because we ended up losing a lot of money because of the lawyer's fees.
While his family life is unraveling, Tony begins to drink more.
Well, I started drinking. We all drank. Like when I had my house, we had house parties all the time. Everybody was a social drinker. More recently, after my divorce, it did get out of control a little more. I was drinking too much, I will admit it.
Tony says he's trying hard to stay sober. In the summer, he works some landscaping, and in the winter, he shovels snow. He wants to move out of House of Friendship, but finding decent, affordable accommodations isn't easy in today's housing market.
I always said it can't get any worse, it can't get any worse, and it has. So I stopped saying that because I don't know anymore. I'd like to get back on my feet. I haven't lost that ambition, but it's tough.
You're listening to First We Eat, the story of House of Friendship. I'm your host, Diane Vernille. From time to time, House of Friendship staff receives notes, poems, and thank you cards from the residents. We're going to hear some of them throughout the program. This first one is read by Bill Inkle. It's called Sharing.
One day, staff needed help with the cleaning. They hired a resident to mop floors and paid him $10. He, in turn, gave it all away in small amounts to other residents who needed the money for coffee or cigarettes. A hostile resident.
All the men who step foot inside House of Friendship have their own set of circumstances that led them to being homeless or having an addiction. And Sean Adicott is no different, except his journey has a remarkable twist. Having suffered with abuse and trauma as a youth, Sean turns to drugs and alcohol.
Towards the end and many years before that, I would use whatever. In the beginning, it started with alcohol, and then it went to cocaine, I remember next. Then I would try different things throughout. Was on oxys and morphine and methadone for 5 years.
Fed up with what he describes as the despair and destruction in his life, Sean signs up for House of Friendship's addiction treatment program.
As you pass by guys in the house, you're introduced, you get shown your bed. There's a schedule. Shortly after that, in the days to come, you'll be assigned to the chore list. You learn how to live again, and you get skills. And so hopefully you'll take that from there and then put that to use when you go get your place in the community.
Sean says there are no quick fixes in the program. Counseling takes him deep into self-examination.
And then you understand things like, I have an issue with abandonment. There's a root thing there with me, right, with people. And you start discovering patterns in your life. And that is the reason why I was trying to cover up all that, and all the abuse and trauma. and everything that I went through made me who I am. But that came as I went through a long process.
The road to recovery for a person battling an addiction is never an easy journey, says Terry Neese. She supervises the team of support workers at House of Friendship.
It takes a great deal of time to reach that place in a human being that is hopeful and able to connect. And for some of the people we support, that's a challenging, it takes years for some of the people we support.
And Terry adds that when you consider a person's past experiences, like Sean's, getting back to a stable place in life takes a great deal of resolve.
I question whether I'd have the same ability and the same resilience and the same resistance to trauma. Oftentimes we talk about, the pains of the traumatized and the pains of the marginalized. And I look around and I see a bunch of epic survivors.
It was during his recovery process that Sean goes to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And there he tells us that he discovers strength through prayer.
It's been the craziest journey I've ever been on, because I've never done this before, and sometimes you don't do it right, and sometimes I think God's telling me something. This is why it's so crucial to talk to each other, to walk with each other.
With this new resolve to do better, Sean turns his sights to education. He never got past grade 8, but with the support of a mentor, Sean returns to the classroom.
So I decided to go back to school and get my grade 12. I obviously want to do it the easy way online. He laughed at me and told me to get into St. Louis, into class with everybody else. So I did that.
St. Louis is an adult education center in Kitchener. It takes Sean a year to earn his high school diploma. After that, he moves on to Conestoga College and works through the social worker program. Sean then applies for and gets a part-time job at House of Friendship on the overnight shift, eventually working his way up to a full-time position. He now serves as a program resources staffer, counseling men who come to the shelter. His own life journey puts him in a unique position.
There's a lot of guys that will open up to me, trust me with a lot of things, and I'm really honored that they're able to do that with me. And I don't take that lightly, and I really hold that dear to my heart. Yeah.
Now 44 years old, Sean is married with a growing family, 2 daughters, 2 stepdaughters, and grandchildren. He says he's in a much better place today, with a career and making a positive contribution to his community at House of Friendship.
And I think what we do here very good is treat them with dignity and respect. Sometimes we're the last house on the block. Sometimes these guys can't go anywhere else in the region except for here.
Good evening, gentlemen. It is now dinner time, so please sign up on the list if you haven't and make your way down to the kitchen. Thank you.
On dinner duty tonight is Rick Alviano, who's been cooking at House of Friendship for about 8 years.
How's it going?
On tonight's menu,
We got chicken and mushroom sauce ready to go.
remember, from day to day, they're not certain of the food donations they might get. And based on that, they're cooking for up to 50 men a day. Relief cook Anita Troyer actually likes that daily unpredictability.
You never know what or when donations are coming in. And so to incorporate that into your time, and also then to incorporate that into the meals at some point in the week. In terms of food, I think that's exciting because I hate to see food go to waste.
There's not much waste tonight. The hearty chicken and mushroom dish is a big hit with the men.
Good, how are you, Tony? Good. Help yourself, man. There's a good dish for you there today.
As Rick fills the plates, he likes to chat with the residents.
You're welcome.
Tonight they're serving about 40 men who might otherwise have gone hungry.
More, we'll bring these up.
Thank you very much for your work tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
There you go, brother. Enjoy.
Planning healthy meals for men who are coping with alcohol or drug addiction can be challenging for the kitchen staff and food coordinator Sandra Wohl.
Depending on the drug that they're on, we have some pretty big appetites, and we always know at the beginning of the month we're going to have a lot of hungry guys because the drug use is higher because they've just gotten some sort of income. So we know that they're hungrier at the beginning of the month because the drugs make them hungrier.
Dietitian Shelley Murphy knows all about the obstacles the poor face when trying to eat healthy food.
So when you have a low income or no income in some situations, it's obviously really, really challenging to eat properly.
Shelley works with the poor, new immigrants, and marginalized at the Guelph Community Health Center, where they teach people how to eat well on a limited income. She sees a direct connection between eating well and good physical and mental health.
When we eat as well as we possibly can, we're optimizing our energy intake. We're getting as many nutrients into our body as possible. That helps sort of all the bodily functions to work as well as they can, and also mental health functions. So our blood sugar can be stabilized, our mood, we don't have those mood swings and dips when we're hungry.
And Shelley points out another reason why it's important for the men at House of Friendship to sit down and share meals together.
I think too, eating in a group atmosphere almost mimics the family mealtime. And some people have, as an adult, might be experiencing that for the first time. As a child, they may not have had the experience of having a family meal, or perhaps that wasn't a necessarily positive experience. And so there can be emotional healing to that, to having that feeling of togetherness and belonging.
The new Canada Food Guide now stresses less meat and playing up plant-based proteins such as beans and legumes, and more fruits and vegetables. But accessing healthy food is never easy for the poor. For the men who go to House of Friendship for a hot meal, Shelley says it's one less thing for them to worry about.
Well, for one, I think it removes the stress of having to think about nourishing yourself, so that you can really concentrate on healing and recovery. So if you're provided with food, you don't need to think about how to access it. That is a significant amount of stress in many people's lives.
You're listening to First We Eat, the story of House of Friendship. I'm your host, Diane Vernille. Back at the shelter, Sandra and the staff are preparing for Thanksgiving dinner. Holidays are always a time for special meals.
We're going to do the traditional Thanksgiving dinner of turkey and stuffing and gravy, mashed potatoes, carrots, pie for dessert, dinner rolls, tea.
During the holidays, they actually see their numbers drop a little because some of the men who can go visit their families.
So it's good that they can connect with family because it's a pretty lonely world if you don't have anybody. Hello, Spencer. How are you today?
Could I get a no bun for anything?
A no bun for you? Are you the last one, Spencer? Okay, sure.
The men who line up for Thanksgiving dinner are not only getting a delicious turkey dinner, but they're also served a helping of Sandra's good humor.
Thank you. I need all the encouragement I can get.
Holidays also bring out volunteers. Sandra says they're crucial to making the place run smoothly.
Well, if it wouldn't be for the volunteers, we wouldn't be able to survive. We are always looking for volunteers. We now have to look for volunteers that have a safe food handlers course if they want to come in to do any cooking, because that's a new government legislation that came out in July. So if somebody wants to come in and they don't have it, then staff still would have to be here with them because it's a law that you have to have somebody on site who has a safe food handlers course.
Pitching in today are Brendan and Bailey, a couple of tech sector workers. They are regulars in the kitchen.
There's certainly an altruistic aspect of volunteerism, and so I'm certainly here to fulfill, the self need to give back to the community, I guess.
We volunteer here a couple times a week, and I'm here because Kitchener-Waterloo is a community that's welcomed me with open arms. I've only been here about a year and a half, and it's about time that I gave back to a community that has done that for me. So.
We're going to listen to another letter now to House of Friendship staff from a resident. This one is titled The Good Life. It's read by Gary McLaren.
During 11 years in the Canadian military working on Hercules aircraft, I saw and experienced 17 countries and their culture. On the news, I heard that Canada is the best place to live and work, and I agree. But I have seen conditions in this country that have left a bad taste in my mouth. There are people in every city and walk in life who do not have that good life. They need our help to bring them to a position where they can live and work. A hostel resident.
We've heard how good food and sitting down to break bread together with others nourishes the mind and body. And another therapy they're trying out is rooted in music. Courtney Harris, a music therapist, encourages musical expression to bring out people's strengths.
So when people come to the music therapy group, I don't teach anyone certain instruments. So the goal isn't to become a better musician, but it's for things like community building, relaxation, emotion regulation.
A few weeks before Christmas, Courtney hosts an open mic session. Residents who are feeling brave and creative are invited to the stage to entertain the crowd.
Welcome to the Holiday Coffee House.
One of the stars of tonight's concert is Jay, 29 years old and dreaming of a career as a rapper.
We are really delighted to welcome to the floor some freestyle rap jams by my main man over here, Jay. Let's hear it for Jay.
Jay seems a bit nervous, but once he gets started, the words start to flow.
I used to do it, but it wasn't cool, so now I had to understand the mistakes that I made too, and repent them and get back upon this. So I'ma be the real man to tell them I was honest. But I ain't have a life, now I be an appetite, eating everything in sight. Now I have a life, even though I'm at House of Friendship. I had to shout out all the staff for taking care of what I need to do, what I need to prove, what I need to shoot, what they want to see the dude on TV, and that's gonna happen soon.
As a therapist, Courtney sees how music can touch people's lives.
I saw so many people connecting around the time of the coffee house that I wouldn't expect. People coming together to do something as simple as a Christmas song or something, just really seeing beyond themselves, seeing music as a community.
I'm feeling courageous. I'm feeling like I can go out there and actually do this professionally. You know, everybody here is so welcoming and so nice, and really helped to break my nervousness.
Of course, the Holiday Coffee House concert wouldn't be complete without some Christmas music.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. We just got the word from the kitchen that turkey dinner is ready.
A special guest is in the kitchen preparing a Christmas feast for the men. It's celebrity chef Daryl Fletcher, known on TV as Chef D. Spending Christmas at House of Friendship is an annual tradition for Chef D and his family.
Amazing how we've grown and the kids have grown around it. Like, you see all our kids are here, and it's just a great time and a great easy way to give back to our community. If we can just give them a little bit of nourishment to get them through the day, is absolutely fantastic. And like I said earlier, it's just a really easy way to give back.
Also helping out is Daryl Law from a local rock radio station.
I come here with my co-host Gail, and we do it every year. So it's great. I love doing it. It's part of our Christmas tradition.
Daryl also brings his 2 kids to help out.
Gravy? There you go, man. Gotta have your gravy, right? Ooh, turkey. There you go, sir. Merry Christmas.
Even though she's officially off for the day, the boss shows up. Sandra Wall promised the men that she'd drop in.
We just talk about how their day is going, because a lot of guys are a little depressed because they're not with family, they're not with their kids. Some of our clients can't see their kids because of court orders.
It seems fitting that on this anniversary year, as House of Friendship marks 80 years of feeding and housing men in need, that Sandra is being recognized for her 35 years of service. Executive Director John Neufeld does the honors at a staff recognition event.
For those of you who don't know Sandra, she has been cooking meals for the gentlemen at the shelter for that whole time. She does it with compassion, with grace. She sends a lot of love, but she also knows how to be tough and how to have some tough conversations with the gentleman. And let's give her one more round of applause for Sandra.
She's called to the stage, and there's a moment of humor.
When Glenn asked her to say a few things, she told him to shut up. And that's kind of the love and approach that's worked so effectively in the kitchen for all these years.
Eventually, Sandra offers a few words.
I just encourage everybody to keep up the good work. We're in a good place. We're pulling people along. We're seeing changes. And thank you for employing me.
Here's one last note from a resident to House of Friendship staff. It's a poem titled When I Am Dead. It's read by Ron Vanderswag.
When I am dead, and over me bright April shakes out her rain-drenched hair, although you lean above me broken-hearted, I shall not care. I shall have peace, as leafy trees are peaceful when rain bends down the bough, and I shall be more silent and cold-hearted than you are now, a hostile resident.
We waited until the end to share an interesting footnote with you. Sandra Wall, who was married for 26 years, met her husband Abe at House of Friendship.
He was a Mexican Mennonite. I would say most of his family was definitely alcoholics. He saw a lot of abuse and drinking in his family. And I think that was just his way of dealing with family situation.
Abe went through House of Friendship's addiction treatment program in the early 1980s. He worked hard to get sober, then began working at the shelter. And that's when Sandra asked him out.
I had been here for pretty much a year, and there was a country show coming to the Center in the Square. Him and I like country music. And I asked him if he wanted to go to the Center in the Square, and he said yes, and that was the beginning.
You asked him?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
2 years later, they were married and had a son. Sandra says she loves that Abe was always trying to be a better person. After his treatment, he went on to earn a high school diploma and landed a job at tech giant RIM, repairing BlackBerries. But in 2010, Abe succumbed to cancer and passed away. Reflecting on his life, Sandra admires how he confronted his personal demons, set goals, and turned his life around.
He wanted to get better. He wanted to have family and friends. So if he wouldn't have wanted that, I don't know that he could have moved through life the way he did.
Abe's life journey, the support he received at House of Friendship and how it helped set him in a healthier direction, is one success story. It's what Sandra hopes for all the men who come through the doors at the shelter.
We don't get to choose family. We don't get to choose some of the circumstances, but we can choose in the end where we take ourselves, what we do with ourselves, and we can take a better life for ourselves if we really want.
After 80 years of serving Waterloo Region, if you ask anyone at House of Friendship what they want more than anything else, strangely, they'll tell you it's to shut the place down, having solved the problems of homelessness, alcoholism, drug addiction, and hunger in the community. But then there's reality. So long as there's a need, House of Friendship will always be a welcoming place for men who have nowhere else to go. Here's a final thought from Executive Director John Neufeld.
Throughout the 80 years is kind of that basic sentiment of we're all called to love our neighbor. And what that looked like in 1939 looks very different in 2019, 2018. But I think it's our responsibility, and we're compelled to keep asking that question. What does the community need today, and how do we respond?
Shelter Supervisor Terry Neese agrees that confronting homelessness needs to be a community response.
I think in order to respond to issues of this magnitude that some of our most marginalized community members face, it's a community response. So I think there's only so much that shelter can do. I think there's only so much that spaces can achieve on their own. I think one of the things that makes us extremely powerful in the community is our desire to reach out and connect with other agencies.
And the final word goes to Sandra Wool, the tough but kind-hearted lady in the kitchen, who helps nourish the men with healthy food while they seek to heal their complicated lives. She's always encouraged when there's a success story.
See our guys go from being down and out to getting better and hopefully moving on to a job. So we see a lot of things, and we hope for everyone to have a better place, to have a better life, and it's touching when you can see that. They know that when they come here, they're often very sick and worn down, and they know when they come here, they'll build themselves up. And we have guys that go away for maybe 4 or 5 years, and then they come back and they'll say, yeah, I had to come back because I'm at my bottom again, and I need to be built up, and I know I can get built up at House of Friendship.
We'd like to thank everyone who took part in the production of First We Eat, the story of House of Friendship. Special thanks to producer Paul Francis Cuddy for conceiving of and coordinating this program and stitching together all the voices you've heard in this broadcast. And to all the people at House of Friendship who strive for a better life. And thank you for listening. I'm your host, Diane Vernile.